I'm getting ready to do panels 2 and 3 of the Sweet Pea Cross and Christmas Flowers design, and I want to pre-cut my applique pieces using the Brother ScanNCut. So I'm here at the canvasworkspace.brother.com, and I'm just going to click New to start a new clean mat, and I will link to a video right up here that goes really slow and step by step if this is a process that's new to you. And that way you can go back and look at that. But I really want to just get moving on this. So, very quickly, I'm going to import the SVG cut files that I created using Embrilliance to make the cut files. So I'm just going to click on this button right here that says SVG. That's where you import SVG. I'm going to choose the file. I went to my quick access Christmas cross and flowers, and here is the folder I created with the SVG files, and I'm on panel 2. You can only do one at a time. So I'm going to put a different color square of fabric in each quadrant of the mat. So I'm just going to touch this one, click this one, dark red, click open and tell it okay. And it's going to pull up. So I'm going to put this one down here. That's my dark red. And then click SVG again, choose file, the green, open. These are my leaves. Click OK. And I'm going to just move them to where I can conserve some fabric. I'll just make a strip. And if I was to group these by highlighting them all, right click and group, I can see down here in the bottom, my green, I like an extra inch. So like 4¼ by 3 should do it. And that's how big of a piece of fabric that I need, 4¼ by 3. And I'm just going to make a little note of that on a notepad here. That makes it easy for me to reference back and see how big I need to make it. Now I am going to right click and ungroup. That just makes it easier if you need to move anything around down on the scanning mat, or I'm sorry, on the mat, because if you download them grouped, you cannot ungroup them at the machine. And this dark red is going to be 6 by what, 6 or 5 5¾ ish, something like that. I just like a little extra all the way around. I'll just do a 6 by 6 square, and that way I know I'll have enough to cut it. I'm going to do the next one, SVG, import, and the light red, and open, and OK. And I'm going to pull this one down, and this one needs to be 5¼ 5.25 by 5.75. All right, and the last one, choose file and the white, and open, and OK. And here we go. I'm going to pull all of these down a little bit, and I want to move them closer together to conserve fabric. Okay, that looks real good. And right click and group. And this will be I'll do 4.5 by 4½. So a 4½ inch square of white, and that will take care of that piece. And right click and ungroup. Okay, I'm ready now to just download this to the ScanNCut, and I can put some heat and bond light on the back of my fabrics, and I am going to get them ready to cut out on the fabric. So I'm going to click ScanNCut transfer, and it's going into the queue now. It says the transfer is ready. So let's go over to the machine and cut all of these out. I'm over here at the ScanNCut, and I am using the turquoise low tack mat. It'll tell you right here at the bottom what the adhesive is on this. Since this is the low tack mat, I have my fabric pretty side up with heat and bond side down. I use heat and bond light on the back. If you don't have a low tack mat and you're going to use the purple standard tack mat, you would want to put pretty side down and heat and bond side up, and you can leave the paper on. If you're using a substrate where the paper wants to peel off, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. I have the black blade in here. This is the standard blade. You can use the gold blade if you want to, which they say is for fabric, but the black blade works just fine. And I've already loaded the mat. So now I'm going to zoom in on the screen so you can see what buttons I'm going to push here. The main menu on the ScanNCut has patterns and scan. And patterns are patterns that were in the machine when you bought it. And then scan is if we had wanted to scan like a paper pattern right now. And I don't want to do that. I am going to scan the mat, but not until we pull the pattern in to see exactly how we will move the pieces around on the fabric. So right here, I'm going to touch this button that says retrieve data, because I want to get the data that we just sent down from the Brother canvas. And you can get the data from inside the machine. Like if I was to save these scans I'm about to pull down in the machine, that's where I would get it. And here's where you would get it from the cloud. Here's where you would get it from a USB, or you might be cabled to your computer. So I'm going to touch cloud, and here we go. We can see all of the parts. And now what I want to do, now I want to scan the mat. I want to take a picture of the mat so we can see where the fabric is exactly according to how our designs are placed. So this blue button right here with a bar across it, that's the mat scanning button. And I'm just going to press start. And it's going to pull it in and scan it. Awesome. Let's zoom in and take a look. So we can see everything is exactly where it needs to be. Now, what you can do, this is real hard to see the white fabric. I mean, I can barely see the line of it here, but I will tell you what you can do is on your fabric itself, you can run like a colored line with a friction marker, one of those that irons off, or even you could even do it with a pencil, because we're not going to be cutting on that line. But you can certainly create a line on white fabric. But I think everything is going to cut just fine. I hope. I'm going to move these just a tad away from the edge. And that way I'm pretty sure, because I can see the edge of the fabric is actually at like 5 3/4. So it's right there. And that's it. I don't need to do anything else with it. I'm going to click OK. And it says please select, and I'm going to hit cut. And in less than 2 minutes, we're going to have these all cut out. Okay, tell it okay, and let's peel up and see what we've got. Oh my gosh, you guys. This is so much better than cutting in the hoop. Oh my goodness. I love this thing. Look at how perfect these are. It's hard to see the white ones, I know, but you can see the reds and the green. Look at that. And they're going to fit perfectly in that placement line. You absolutely want a ScanNCut for this. And it doesn't matter if you get the SDX 85 or the top of the line 330D, they all ScanNCut the same, and you'll get the same results. Oh, look at that. Isn't that great? Oh my gosh. And you want to scrape it with your little spatula so that you don't stretch your pieces at all as they come off the mat. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? That's awesome. I love it. This is so much better than turning that mat around in your lap. This works every time, you guys. Now don't forget, if you're using the purple mat, you want to put your fabric upside down, and you'll need to mirror it. Let me add that in there. Be sure to mirror if you're doing it upside down. You need to mirror your pieces. And you can do that either in the canvas or you can do it at the machine, either one. All right, we are ready to go to the embroidery machine. I'm just going to hit the eject button, put my mat away and hit home, and I'm done. All finished. All right, now we're ready to go over to the embroidery machine. Okay, I'm all finished threading the machine, and I've got a bobbin here ready to go. I'm using the magnetic Fill-Tech bobbins. This is a white one. And because I'm doing applique, I'm gonna go ahead and put on the quilting table. I really like using this for applique. That way I can pull the hoop out and have some area to work. Let me make sure I got that in there. Screw that down. Yep, that looks good. It's pretty easy to put on. I'll put a video up here of how to put it on. When I first got the machine, I did a video on that. All right, so I'm gonna be using the 8x12 magnetic hoop. I'm making the 6x10 design, but I'm gonna use this. I need to put some stabilizer in it. Okay, I've put some no-show poly mesh cutaway in the hoop, in the magnetic hoop, and now it is time to go through the design and assign thread spools to each of the color stops. So I sent the design over wirelessly. I'm going to touch the wireless button. There's a pocket there. And here it is right here. And it says it's too big and it's going to rotate it 90 degrees. That's fine. Okay. And that's upside down. That's going to make me crazy. So I'm going to edit that just a little bit. So I'm going to hit set and I'm going to rotate it. It's not necessary, but it just helps my brain because this is panel number 2 and that's what it's going to look like when I'm looking at it straight. Okay, so now that that's done, now I can just hit edit end. Here is where you could rotate some more, do size changes, mirror it, all of that. I'm not doing any of that, so I'm going to hit edit end. Here's where there's 3 spools, and this is where you're going to go through each one of the color stops and assign a thread color. So I generally don't go through a thread palette or anything like that. I match colors to the fabrics that I'm using and just put those on the back of the machine. So I'm going to touch the spools, and this is color number 1. This is stitch number 1, and here's a little preview, and there's 27 stitches. So this is the placement line for the batting, and that can be in white. So I'm going to hit number 6 because spool number 6 is white. Now, the way this machine thinks, you would think you would tell it to stitch, then stop, and that's not the way it thinks. It wants to stop and then stitch. So we've stitched out number 1, the very first. You can tell we're on stitch number 1 of 27. I've told it it's color number 6. Now I'm going to go to stitch number 2, and before stitch number 2 happens, I want it to stop. So I'm going to touch the little hand, and the hand comes up right here, and that tells it to stop, and then I want that to stitch in number 6. And I want it to stop so I can put the batting and the fabric down. All right, the next one is the all over background quilting. That is going to be spool number 5 in black. And then the next one is the placement line for the light part of the cross, and I want that to be spool number 9. So I'm going to touch 9, and there's the tack down for the cross. So before it stitches, I want it to stop, and then I want it to stitch number 9. I've got one more color that I need than I have spools for. So the way I normally do that is like, okay, so this is yellow, and I don't have yellow back there. And what I will do is put a pause. I'll put a stop right here. And then when the machine stops, that tells me I need to change out a thread. And normally I will change out like the first one closest to me on this side because the other side is close to a wall. But this is easiest for me to change out. And then I'll have to change it back because I'm going to use green again before I use the yellow in the next panel. So I hope that makes sense. So this is going to be spool number 1 because when it stops, I'm going to switch it to yellow. And then here we are. This is the dark red, that's spool number 2. This is the light red, that is spool number 10. And this last one is orange again, and that is spool number 7. So that's how that's going to work. And we are all done. So I'm going to tell it okay. Normally I will go back and double check this, but I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to tell it okay. I have confidence in myself, I think. I'm going to go ahead and hit embroidery. And we are really ready to go. Now, a lot of people would want to save this first. And I'll tell you, you can go ahead and save it in the machine, but it won't remember the spool numbers that you chose when you bring it back, and you'll have to do it again. I don't know why it doesn't do that. Okay, I had to turn the screen. I had to add some more lighting, but I turned the screen because there was a pretty big glare. So we're ready to go now. I am just going to hit the lock button and have it go. See, so it stopped right before it stitched the second stitch, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to put down my batting, make sure to cover everything, and I have a little bit of a direction on this fabric. I didn't have to stop and change threads. see, I'm gonna make sure I got enough here. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna remove the hoop and trim away the glitter fabric. I'm gonna leave the little bit here in the seam allowance. This should be the tack down for the flowers, white flowers. You really shouldn't have to do the tack down because you've already tacked it down with the iron, but just in case your cutting was off a little bit, you could do micro trimming if you needed to, but it doesn't look like I'm going to need to. Everything's fitting just perfect. And I'm going to put the leaves on. And tack down for the leaves. Placement line for the dark red flower. Tack down for the dark red flower. Now it's going to stitch the metallic for the veins in the flower. Boy, it is nice not having to change threads. Okay, and now put on the light red flower. All right, that's it for the applique, so I have turned off my iron. It's going to finish up doing its thing for the whole rest of the design. And we've got another 40-some minutes to go, so I will meet you back here when we're done. All right, we're all finished. This turned out just beautiful. I am gonna remove it from the hoop, and then we're gonna let the trimmer by George work its magic. This turned out really pretty. Okay, so if you haven't heard of the trimmer by George before, this is a ruler that's made by Hoop Sisters, and it has a metal lip on it right here. And you need to use a 60mm rotary cutter, not your standard 45. And what we're gonna do is trim the batting and the stabilizer away at one time by folding the fabric over and then pushing this lip up against the seam line and folding it over like that. Let me push this up. And then I'm gonna just run it right along. There we go. And then there are measuring lines on it. You can flip it down now. And I'm gonna trim my 1/2-inch seam allowance. So one tool for 2 jobs. There we go. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Let me do this other side. Helps to have a rotary mat. I've got 5 or 6 of them around here somewhere. And do I use it? No. Isn't that how that works? This is just so much easier than trimming in the hoop when it's time to trim the stabilizer away. This just streamlines the whole process. Fold this over. Line up my 1/2 inch mark there. There we go. All done. Look at this. So it's beautiful on the front and perfectly trimmed on the back right next to that line. So that stitch line. It just turned out gorgeous. So, all right, so we are finished with panel number 2, and the next one I do will be panel number 4 because panel number 3 is exactly put together the exact same way as this one. All right, we'll talk to you soon. You guys go sew something. Bye.